Coming up on this episode of Common Denominator.
I am honestly grateful to have my disability. I think that it is something that people don't expect me to say, but I think it has shaped me into the person I am and has given me such a unique perspective on life.
Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator, where we shine a light on people that are striving to make the world a better place. Today, Cerebral Palsy advocate Chelsea Bear. I just finished the conversation with Chelsea, and what really stuck in my mind was the fact that here she is, she lives with this disability, with cerebral palsy, and she goes ahead as an adult and she decides to become an advocate for exactly the thing that was super tough on her during her childhood. And I have tremendous respect for people that have the courage to do that. Before you listen to the conversation, a quick reminder that if you like the show, please subscribe and follow me on social media at Popack. Now, here's my conversation with Chelsea Bear. Enjoy. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi.
Welcome to Common Denominator. Good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
So I want to go back to the background of your personal journey, and really kind of start there. You know, because I think of, you know, I'm a father of 10 kids, and, you know, you growing up with cerebral palsy, you know, what was that first moment kind of where your parents realized that that there's something that we have to figure out, and when were you actually diagnosed?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting story, and I think cerebral palsy in itself, the diagnosis can really vary from person to person. So with me specifically, cerebral palsy is said to be caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain, either during pregnancy, during birth, or right after. But for my mom's case, everything went pretty normal for her whole pregnancy. I did end up being a C-section delivery just because of how I was positioned. But everything went fine as far as everyone knew. So it wasn't until I was about 8 months old that my mom was at like a mommy and me class, and she was picking up the other babies or, doing one of the activities, and realized, their muscles were a little bit more defined than mine. They were starting to hit milestones physically that I wasn't yet. So around 8 months old is when she started talking to the doctor, trying to figure out, what could possibly be going on. And this was 30 years ago. So there wasn't, as much information known as there is now. So it took until I was about 3 years old to officially be diagnosed.
Wow. So, I mean, I think about it, you're saying kind of during the birth, there's so many, when I think about the miracle of kids being born and that process. So you're saying that something happens during the birth that affects oxygen going to the brain, and that is the cause. Is it the nervous system? Something happens with the nervous system?
Essentially, from my understanding, it's a brain injury. So with the lack of oxygen, something happens to the brain, and depending on what part of the brain has that lack of oxygen, it's kind of an injury where my brain isn't able to give the proper signals to my legs. And then it also impacts, muscles and spasticity, and it's kind of a neurologic disability.
And growing up, so you get the diagnosis, and were there changes, day-to-day changes that you had to make or adjust as a kid? Growing up as a kid is just tough, but then, right, you have this diagnosis. What was that like kind of day to day? What were your challenges day to day?
Yeah, so I always kind of look at it at the bright side, where I've never known anything different. So even, as a baby growing up, I never knew any other kind of movement or any other kind of life, which I think was kind of a benefit to me. But that said, there were definitely some challenges that came up. So as I was learning to walk, I would use different mobility devices. So I had little crutches when I was little. I had a walker. And now I've progressed using a mobility scooter for long distances. But, growing up, I'd say I had a pretty regular childhood. I was the only one kind of in my friend group and my family that had a disability. But that, of course, came with challenges, when it came to sports or things that I wanted to physically do with my peers. I couldn't always do the same things as them, or I'd have to adapt or maybe sit on the sidelines and kind of cheer them on instead. So things like that, like in the everyday life, that sometimes I kind of had to take a step back and have that realization that I can't do what my peers were doing, which was sometimes a little tough. And then regular doctor's appointments, physical therapy, having to spend my time doing things like that when other kids were just playing. So there was a good mix of the things that I had to do, of course, focusing on my disability, but then I also was able to enjoy the other side of things as well.
And today, are there specific challenges that you have today that you have to work with?
Yeah, I think so physically, if you see like a video of me walking, I drag my feet when I walk, and I get pretty tired doing anything, over like 15 minutes straight of walking, let's say. So I do use a mobility scooter part-time, which for the most part works well for me. Sometimes I have issues with accessibility, if there's stairs to get into a building and not an elevator is a great example of that. Physically, also working out has always been a challenge for me, just like figuring out the things that work best for me and my body and the way I move. And I recently started working with an adaptive trainer who's been amazing in helping me figure out, the right ways to move my body so I'm not hurting myself instead of helping myself. But other than that, I think I learned to adapt. I've learned to kind of navigate living with a disability. I think there's a lot of negative connotation with disability in general. So, societally always kind of working against that and trying to shift the narrative and things like that. But those would be the main kind of obstacles I face.
I want to just take a moment to congratulate you, honestly, because I've said it many times on the show. It's the thing that is, I guess, the thing that you want to avoid. It actually becomes your meaning and purpose, and you're an example through your advocacy. Do you do advocacy full time? Is that your full time? In other words, create awareness of cerebral palsy. Is that what you do? So
Yeah.
So imagine that it's the thing that sits with you at night when nobody's around, when you grew up with, right? It's in society, it's seen as a certain way. So at your age, to come full circle, thinking how internally strong you are, and then to go ahead and now you have 500,000 followers on social media. I mean, let's go back when that decision that you decided to become an advocate, because I think that there's like build up and then you hit like this space and you're like, you know what, I'm going to do this. That's the stories that I've heard. So tell us, please, your journey.
Yeah, so I always envisioned myself telling my story in some way. I remember there was one time in middle school I was pretty involved in leadership and student government because it wasn't as physical, so it was things I could kind of put my time into. And I was at a little convention and there was a motivational speaker, and I remember watching him and leaving and being like, I feel like one day I have a cool story to tell, I'm going to do it. But then, I go through high school, college, and my main goal then was just get a 9 to 5, make sure I can pay my bills. And one day, when I am able to financially support myself, then maybe I can pursue, this kind of long-term goal of mine of being a motivational speaker. And then in my mid-20s, I kind of had this light bulb moment go off. I was talking to a friend, and we had a mutual friend that I had been friends with for probably 5 years at that point. And the friend was talking to me and she was like, I was talking to our friend and I asked her what your disability was or why you walk the way you do, because she didn't really know me that well. And my friend that I'd known for 5 years had no idea what the name of my disability was. She didn't know if something like tragic had happened to me. She didn't know like anything about it, which on one hand I was very grateful for, because I was grateful that this friend could be my friend, disability or not. It wasn't an issue. We would have wine nights and it was, not a big deal. But then on the other hand, I felt like I was kind of not doing myself and my story justice by having some of the closest people of my life not even feel kind of comfortable talking to me about something that I live with every single day. So that's when I had this kind of internal shift, and the internet is a thing where it wasn't a while ago, and I wanted to start a blog. I'm like, let me just start sharing some of these things that are weighing heavy on me that I don't really talk about proactively with anyone, even I'm close to in my life. So it really started as kind of just this cathartic thing for me to explore, share how I feel, like if I was nervous traveling somewhere, but I didn't want to kind of burden my friends with that anxiety I had. Like, would I be able to actually get around on my scooter in a new city? And it kind of just started gradually growing. And then when I started posting more consistently on Instagram, my videos just started to hit millions of views and started growing like crazy. And then I was kind of put in this position where I have this platform. I need to pursue it. And it's obviously one I'm very passionate about.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to the Common Denominator podcast. My guest today is Chelsea Bear, Cerebral Palsy advocate. Next week, I'll chat with Tiffany Miranda, the founder of Girls Make Beats, a super cool nonprofit that teaches girls to become the next generation of DJs, producers, and engineers. Tiffany will share how her own experiences as a young singer in a male-dominated industry inspired her to help countless girls across the country realize their dreams. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Now, back to the show. I think of two words. What I always think about is vulnerability, because I think vulnerability is the only way that people can truly connect with each other. But you also have to have courage with that vulnerability. So it's like the combination of two, and stay the path. And it could be lonely, it could be, dark and tough, but I love that you're on the other side of that and you're an advocacy of that and continuing to be that way. How was that first experience when you saw, millions of views and you're like, all I'm doing is I'm just telling my story, what's true and an emotion. How was that feeling? That must have been tremendous.
Oh yeah, it was wild. It was confusing. I remember I was having dinner with some friends. I didn't look at my phone for a couple hours. I picked it up and all of a sudden I just had thousands of new followers and I'm like, what is going on? Like I just posted a video of myself going for a walk in the park, something people do every single day. And it just blew up. And I remember thinking the more consistently it started happening, I'm like, okay, all these people are looking at me, which I know in real life, when I walk into a room, people's eyes automatically come to me and I understand why. But now the same thing was kind of happening on social media. So while I was having this opportunity, I didn't want it to be just some, inspirational thing that people were seeing, maybe smiling at, scrolling to the next. I wanted to start kind of attaching educational messages to that and awareness. And, as you said as well, the vulnerable side of, it's not always positive. It's not always easy, but talking about it, I think, is really important and just helps people get perspective and understand what the disability experience could be like.
And I'm sure, there's a lot of people listening and people that have something on their mind or something that they want to do. What advice would you say if someone wants to, let's just say, do advocacy and they want to start? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I love to tell people, if you're comfortable speaking about something, to just do it. That I really feel there's not one specific method. I think as long as you're being authentic to yourself and the messages you want to put out, it will reach the right people. I think it's really easy in the age of social media to get hung up on how many views or likes or comments and things you get. But something I always tell myself is, if one person watching something I post feels like they can relate to someone, they feel represented, something that invokes some kind of feeling of that way that's positive that they could take with them and apply to them moving forward, then it's worth it. So I just think, whatever you're putting out there, as long as it's something you are proud of, then that should be the most important thing that kind of moves you forward.
I want to go back to the school setting when you were in school because my kids are in school now, and some of them, unfortunately, some of them are bullied sometimes, and more and more I read about it, it's becoming it's an issue. It's a major issue. And did you experience any of that? Any bullying when you were in school, and kind of how did you deal with that, or your parents or yourself?
I definitely did. Interestingly enough, I think high school was the worst of it. I think, elementary school and middle school, it still happened, but simply because people, the other kids maybe didn't understand or, but I think it always comes down to educational, just helping, being open to talking about why it's not okay to say certain things to someone. But I think my parents did a really good job at just having me realize, if someone is being a bully, it's not really a reflection of me. It's more of something they need to work on and they're going through. And as long as I can kind of stand up for myself, go about it in a kind way and just kind of try to remove myself from situations like that, which of course is always easier said than done. I know that. But I think that just, as a parent's perspective, I think just, building your child up, giving them that confidence to be who they are and allowing them to feel safe in your own space, that when they are out in the world, if they are facing something like that, hopefully they have kind of the self armor to go through it.
I kind of think of a society that if you want, like, for instance, parents, they want their kids to hopefully be leaders in whatever environment they're in. In order to do that, unfortunately, there's a lot of uncomfortable moments, right? And I think I like that you talk about safety. Maybe as parents, you just have to make them feel safe, or because there's also tremendous peer pressure in high school for typical vaping, drugs, alcohol, smoking. It's a super tough. And now with TikTok and social media, it's becoming more and more tough. So I think as parents, the more and more you can make them feel safe and make them feel good, right? I mean, that's
yeah, and I think being a resource to talk it through with them. If they did have some kind of negative experience, I think, of course, as a parent, you want to go right into the mode of, who said this to you? What can I do? But, just talking it through with them, helping them navigate those feelings that they're feeling if they are upset, and then trying to talk through kind of the tools of things they can do themselves to protect themselves moving forward.
And I was really impressed to hear, I know you enjoy sports and you travel. Tell us about that. That's it's part of your life.
Yeah, I love to travel. I always have. I used to be intimidated by it to a certain degree. If my scooter would be able to navigate, if everyone I'm with in the group, kind of would not be able to do certain things that we wanted to as a group because of me. But I think, just every time you travel somewhere new, learning the cultures, meeting people is always something that lights me up. And the more I learn about it, the more resources there is for accessible travel. I just got back from a trip to Costa Rica, which is a beautiful
Oh,
country,
yeah.
but there's so many hills and different terrains. I never really thought I'd be able to make it. But I found a company that does accessible travel and everything was, smooth and perfect. So it just kind of reignites my passion for it. And I love sharing that with others, hopefully as a resource for them too.
That's tremendous. Yeah. I mean, to give that ability, I mean, I'm a huge, I have a travel bug, and I love it. And it really, you get to experience different cultures and different ideas. So for sure.
Mm-hmm.
How was it? I know one of your posts had 55 million views, which is tremendous. What was your feedback? What was your reaction? Being able to have that influence or that on that amount of people.
Yeah, I think, whenever a video of mine goes viral like that, there's always two sides of it. There's the people that really see it, they take something from it, they apply it in their own life, or they learn something. And then, of course, there's people who are just scrolling and say mean things because they're on the other side of the screen and they're not sure. So I think, for me, the biggest thing is focusing on the positive sides of that and the people that it does impact in the right ways. And it's just kind of a feeling that I don't know if I'll ever get used to, just knowing that I'm able to share such important messages with such a large amount of people and, hoping to just make a positive kind of ripple in the world.
Chelsea, when you do see those negative comments, does that bother you? How do you handle that?
Sometimes it bothers me, but for the most part, I'm able to not let it really get to me. And I'm really grateful to have a pretty strong support system in my life that if it really does bother me, I could talk to them. But normally I view those negative comments as just a boost in engagement. They're helping me get
Reframing.
more comments. And I think beyond that, I really try not to respond to them. I don't like to feed into that energy, but I do think sometimes it is important. And just to give some background, the comments could be just making fun of the way I walk, comparing me to a dinosaur, saying I should be in the zombie apocalypse or things like that. Normally I ignore them, but I do like to respond every now and then just so my followers can see that it's okay or that it's not okay to say these things, and kind of reinforcing why I do what I do. I do it to help people understand that bullying and things of that nature are not okay. But for the most part, I'm able to kind of navigate it pretty well. I know that's not the case for everybody, but that's why I try to address them from time to time.
Tremendous. I share that. I share that. That's tremendous. And I know another side of it is being a corporate advocate. In other words, I know Disney and CVS. What does that look like for other people that are thinking about doing something like that?
Yeah, I think for me, I always try to work with brands that I align with, or if there's a product I think my platform and followers would benefit from. And I think as someone in this role as a content creator, it also challenges me to kind of appeal to my audience while also staying true to myself and working with brands that, I think are important to amplify. So they usually give, creative briefs and decks, and I have a background in public relations, so I personally just kind of enjoy being on the other side of things and sharing, how disability can be incorporated into different products or experiences and sharing that out. So whenever a brand reaches out, I'm really excited to hear from them and figure out ways that we can collaborate where both of us it's beneficial.
Are there other kind of social media influencers, such as yourself in the disability space,
Yeah.
that you collaborate with and work with?
Yeah, there's a ton. And I really didn't know any before I started posting, but over the past couple of years, I've been fortunate to meet a lot of them. And because my platform started to really grow during the pandemic, a lot of it started out virtually. And over the past year or so, I've been starting to meet people in person as well. So that, I've developed a lot of friendships with people who have the same disability as me, but also different ones, which has been, even for myself, very eye-opening, just learning about different disabilities and how they affect people. And I love to collaborate with them. So I'm showing my followers that, I'm not the only experience that there is when it comes to disability. So I like to highlight their stories as well and collaborate with them.
So I say, how can people know who you are unless you express who you are, right? So, and they say like attracts alike. So you get to, how good of a feeling is it, people, similar experiences and, right? You find as they say, you find your tribe.
Yeah. It's a community. And, like I said, growing up, I never really knew anyone else that had a disability but me. And while my friends and family were always so supportive and would listen to me, there's just something different about talking about it with someone who goes through a similar experience.
What is something, we ask the guests this, and I have a feeling what the answer might be, but top of your mind, what is something that you're grateful for?
I am honestly grateful to have my disability. I think that it is something that people don't expect me to say, but I think it has shaped me into the person I am and has given me such a unique perspective on life that I don't know that I would have without kind of living with my disability. So I would say I'm grateful for that.
I remember one of my guests and a number of my guests go to that. They go to the thing that sits with them and the thing that they've been able to turn around, and that becomes their definition. That becomes their why, their emotion, their everything. So it's not a job. It's not a thing. They're completely entrenched and become self-aware who they are, and they've accepted, and not only accepted but expressed and really been comfortable in who they are. And the fact that that's your number one gratitude says a lot of who you are. So thank you for that. And the other thing we ask is, what is something about yourself that people do not know? Could be anything.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yes.
I mean, I love to cook. I think I'm not the best at it, but it's something that I think people initially, when they see me, they may not think that, because it could be hard or something like that, but it's something that I enjoy to do.
People that enjoy cooking, the typical reasoning is they say it's great therapy. They just love, just getting in the kitchen, and it could be Master Chef or it's just simple. So it's really appreciated.
Love it.
But thank you. This has really been tremendous, and hopefully we keep spreading that positive impact on people. And if people want to find out more about you and follow you on social, how would they do that, Chelsea?
I'm on all social media platforms at the handle @RealChelseaBear. And I post on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I just launched a channel a couple months ago, so you can find me anywhere on there.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. It's really been great.
Yeah.
And best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Chelsea. Next week, I'll speak with Tiffany Miranda. She's the founder of Girls Make Beats, a nonprofit that empowers girls to become the next generation of DJs, producers, and engineers. She'll share why it's so important to equip young women with the tools they need to thrive in an industry that historically hasn't treated them very well. Please subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode, and follow me on social media @Popack. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.